Hello, welcome to Beyond the Filter. My name is Liz Ryerson, and I am here with Auriea Harvey. That's how you pronounce your name, right?
Yes, you got it absolutely right.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Um, professional, very professional here.
Yeah, yeah. Very,
Um,
very.
so, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I wanted to talk to you about. We haven't talked for a while.
Oh, way too long. We haven't talked
Yeah.
in I must say you're one of my favorite people to just sit around talking to.
Oh.
Like, it's like,
Yeah,
I-
when did I met you at the Indiecade, right? Like the first.
yeah, yeah, but I think we might have met at a GDC before that. I seem to like vaguely remember sitting around getting blindingly drunk with you somewhere in California, also like in the
I
Bay
think
Area.
I think that was in LA.
Was that in LA? Okay, it could have been, you know, as one does. It's like I've forgotten where it was.
Well, you
Uh,
travel a lot. Also, it was California, so.
yeah, California, somewhere. I got drunk with you, but it was, yeah, we had a great conversation. Every time we meet up, I feel we have a
Aw.
great conversation. So, uh,
Yeah. So Auriea is one half of Tale of Tales, formerly a game studio, now making a VR project uh,
yeah,
about
among other things.
cathedrals, among other
Yeah.
things.
Currently trying to figure out what we're doing with our lives also, and yeah, I'm gonna be teaching in September
Where?
also at Parsons Paris.
Oh.
They have a Paris campus or whatever. It's in school in New York. It's
Mm.
where I graduated from
Oh, I
actually,
didn't
in
know that you
New
went
York
to
City.
Parsons.
Yeah, that's where I went in New York City. It's Parsons School of Design, and they have an offshoot. They've always had it. It's been there for like a long time in Paris. And so, yeah, when I sort of was talking to a friend of mine who works there and telling him that I didn't know what the heck I was doing, he was like, "Hey, you want to come and teach something?" And I was like, "Why, yes, yes, I would love to." And so I'm actually starting simple and teaching drawing and digital imaging for the first semester,
Cool.
my first semester of teaching experience. I've already added it to my Twitter profile. Is that bad? Like,
No.
I've done it yet. And I'm just like, professor, professor.
It's a very prestigious thing to put in your Twitter profile.
Yeah. It's kind of funny though. I'm just like imagining it being a complete disaster, but I'm sort of on the other hand thinking, how could I possibly mess this up? There's no way.
Oh my God, there are
So,
so many people who don't know very much who teach.
yeah, I guess
I'm
so.
sure you'll be fine. You have so much experience.
Well, I feel like if I can communicate some of the passion that I have for not only drawing but also digital media, it's like which happens to be the entire class is drawing and digital media. So it's pretty exciting for me to like be able to communicate about sort of the basics of what I do. Like it has nothing to do with my previous profession as such, but it's sort of the underpinnings of everything. And it's sort of like philosophically, I can talk about things that I believe underpin all art making, since it's a fine art school, but it's mainly a design oriented fine art school.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like I can, get into kind of how all these things underpin all like drawing and how even visual communication, drawn visual communication, sort of can help you in not only your profession but your life. It's sort of like sitting all the kids down and going, "This is the most important thing you will ever learn." you know, Whether that's true or not. But yeah,
I mean,
so
I'm sure many of them will eat it up anyway.
yeah, yeah. So I'm pretty excited that it's something I can be so passionate about and feel sort of confident about.
Yeah, I'll say that like as a when I was undergraduate, if like um any of the professors that I had like actual experience in the field, like I admired them like 10 times more, even if it was something that I didn't like or I'd never heard of, just knowing that they had actually like done stuff and
Yeah.
had insight based on that, because that seems
Yeah,
to be
I'm
a.
I'm actually hoping that some of these like students are like interested in doing more with computers than just, surfing the web and like, maybe, changing alternate photo in Photoshop or something. Like I want to teach them a bit about 3D also because that's my thing. And that's kind of what Parsons wants is they want you to come from a professional field and then like sort of associate whatever it is you're teaching with your, expertise. So it's like I can sort of mix it up with all kinds of things.
Hmm.
Um, so it's pretty exciting. And when I was, I sort of didn't know if I wanted to teach, so I did all this big tour of it where I went to all these different universities in the United States not too long ago, a few months ago. Like so, I went to NYU Game Center, and I went to UCLA Game Lab. They all have these names, and I went to CMU. They have a great name, Studio for Creative Inquiry, which is
Oh, I like
name for
that.
everything. That's just fantastic. Yeah. So I went to all these places and gave talk and met with students, most importantly. So
That's cool. Yeah, I'm sad that I didn't get to see it, 'cause I wasn't.
yeah, well, if I didn't come near you
Well, yeah, there
close
isn't
enough.
any major like universities around Portland, but
Well,
um,
it was just I kind of just show up when I'm invited. So all
yeah,
these different places invited me, and I strung it all together and turned it into this big, like U.S. tour thing. And it was a lot of fun. But I think the best part of it was meeting students and finding out what they were thinking and what they were doing, and I guess also recognizing that I had something to say to students, like that I could. Like I sort of thought of it as like a sort of mini like psychology like moment. It was like what did I say? It was like the art student whisperer, it's like figuring out like where their problems are in their work and like trying to help them like rethink their process or rethink whatever little, whatever thing they're dealing with. And I kind of when I approached it from that perspective, it felt really good. Like, oh, okay, even though just dropping out of the clear sky and like talking to you for like 40 minutes or whatever, I can still help you in some way.
yeah.
I don't know. I think post games, I just want to be useful and helpful. And,
I
yeah.
understand that feeling. I'm also in my sort of post games phase right now.
All
I
right.
I wasn't like nearly as involved for as long as you were, nor received nearly the amount of shit that you and Michael have received, but
Well, there was I'm sort of getting some perspective on it all now, and I'm able to focus on the glory more now than I
that's
was
good.
before, I think, which has been
That's
healthy.
important. I want to go back and talk about Sunset for a second because
Sure.
I had like a really interesting experience with that game, and I feel like when that game came out, like it came out last year, it was just for people who listening who might not know. It is a game about oh gosh, I don't know if like how much I want to go into like trying to
Well,
well
they can Google it, Tale of
yeah.
Sunset, and then they'll get like the whole like who knows what you find when you do that. Oh
Oh yeah,
man,
you probably have
it's like
like some. Oh my God. I
first of all you
anyway.
type Tale of Tales and you get the movie, and then and it's like we were first. Well, we were second with that title, but
I
then
know about the movie. Yeah, because that's
the movie's
a
great by the way, but we have nothing to do with the movie. People keep like tweeting at us and contacting us on Facebook about this. We're just like we have
well that
nothing.
movie was made like in the 70s, wasn't it?
No, there was the first one. Yuri Norstein
Oh,
made
okay,
a movie
that's
called
the
Tale
one.
of Tales.
That's the one that I know
Yeah,
about.
and it was an animation. And then recently, there's been another movie that's come out that stars like Selma Hayek or something,
Oh, okay.
called Tale of Tales. It's a beautiful movie. It's
Okay.
great. But
I only know
anyway,
the Yuri Norstein one, which I assumed that
yeah,
you
the
got your
Yuri
name
Norstein
from.
one's really sweet. It's
Yeah.
really sweet. We only knew about that one even after we had picked our name for
Oh,
it.
that's funny.
But our last game is called Sunset, and
Yes.
yeah,
Sunset.
you play a housekeeper in a South American dictatorship, and Civil
Yes.
War breaks out, and crazy town.
And there's that whole so what I really liked about that game was there was that whole tension between which I can see in just talking to you and like the work that you've Tale of Tales have done for years is that there's that tension between like okay, I want to make a difference in the world, but I also want to make art, and those things don't necessarily have to be diametrically opposed to each other, but sometimes they are. They have a very strange relationship with each other. And if you're
Mhm.
involved in sort of like an activist kind of community, like it's hard to exactly know how to reconcile like making art with that, because at one point are you making propaganda, and what is
Right.
the interaction between those? And I feel like Sunset tries very hard to like the conflict of the protagonist Angela is like very much that sort of conflict that I feel, especially in this day and age, of like, okay, I want to like make a difference, I want to do this, but they're also like what I actually really desire to do is this art, and the stuff that is the most meaningful for me is like oftentimes not really, you can't really attach it to a particular ideology or place in time
Mhm.
um, so much. Like it is really kind of beyond that. So how do you reconcile those two things? How is this like um
Well, in the game, I mean, we reconciled it by making it incredibly convoluted, I think. We're like setting it in South America in 1972 with the protagonist is like from America. She's a black woman during the time of the civil rights movement. So you put this like woman who's like very almost ignorant of her surroundings,
mm,
into a position of almost like, trying to figure out what's going on someplace in a completely different culture. So it's like she's got the culture war that she's running away from, and then she's like in the middle of another culture war. And it's just like, how does she deal with that and what does she think about that? And that's felt we could do, or all we always feel we can do, is not to pass judgment on these situations. You know what I mean? To just
yeah.
be like, set it up and let it go. You know what I mean? Set up the world in which this is possible. Because it is. I mean, yeah, I feel it, as an expatriate, living in another culture or living in another country,
Yeah, I
it's
could
like we just
very
set it up.
no, like
No,
knowing you, I could very easily draw lines between the protagonist in that game and you.
oh yeah, all games, all every
Yeah.
artist paints himself, or herself, It's like this is no different,
Mhm.
Like all of our games are like that. Everything,
Yeah,
is like that. I think for
absolutely.
everyone actually, but in any rate,
But I
it's like
guess
yeah.
sorry. I guess the thing that I wanted to get at is like I feel like that dynamic is something that isn't really talked about like very often. Like it's not really kind of articulated. I mean, it's something that I think a lot of people think about, but
Hmm.
especially like in this day and age, like when there is so much going on, there's so many like activist movements, Black Lives Matter, all that stuff. Like, and this is like this feels more relevant to that stuff than anything else that I could think of in video games. And it was kind of like a discussion
Oh,
that
thanks.
I, yeah, no problem. Sorry, I'm like,
Okay.
but I don't want to get like sanctimonious about it. But like I felt like that game, like, and maybe this is just a larger problem with video games. Almost everyone that I saw who talked about it, a lot of people, didn't like the game. Um, Almost everyone that I saw talked about it like they were looking for something that wasn't there, and
Right.
there's this like expectation that you're supposed to meet this. I don't know, like people have this idea that you're supposed to meet these certain expectations that
Hmm.
with art, like, and with games especially, that like when something doesn't decide to follow that path or whatever, then it is deemed a failure.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and that's like the tragedy for me with a lot of game stuff. And I felt that too with stuff that I've made, and I felt it with like,
Yeah, I remember you were talking about the games of Michael Burrow once, like
yeah,
quite a lot about like how people were just like, oh, redo the graphics, and you're like, no, that's like completely intentional, and he shouldn't have to redo anything to meet your expectation of whatever it's supposed to be. And I think that's a very important point, actually, that within video games, people have all these design expectations, and I think it's because it's been so commercial for so long, like for its entirety, that people have expectations of commercial product that they, number one, the customer's always right. Number two, it's like buying a pair of Nikes or something. You expect them to fit your feet. And,
Yeah.
they come in all these different colors so you can find the one that suits your personality. But in the end, you just really expect it to be this quality thing that you can wear and like, until it goes out of style and then you throw it away and then you get another one. And
Well,
that's not what
yeah.
a video game is or what it has to be anyway. It
I
has
and
been. But
I think it's like a problem with a lot of art in general, especially art that is made to be consumed in
mhm,
like a mass sort of culture kind of way, not in
mhm,
like a gallery setting, is that I think like people are so there are these like I don't know, like I'm trying to figure out what the core of what I'm getting at here is just like um like I feel like so much of the work that I view as really important or valuable is stuff that just didn't meet at all with like there's a certain like form or like whatever that like even in the past like film critics and art critics and something things get aestheticized. There's these forms that arise, there's like trends that arise, and people, whether they know it or not necessarily, oftentimes fall into these or follow these. And
mhm.
so when there are things that kind of break with that like that idea or that structure, because like the thing with games is like there are a lot of like I like I'm sure like our tastes are different in some ways like as far as that stuff, but I like a
I'm
lot
sure
of
there's overlap as well.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But like for something like Doom, like that game is very like I like that game. It's very designed to be very game like. It's designed to play in a certain way, and there's like an art to it, but it's less apparent immediately. And that's kind of the mainstream thing with games is like
Mhm.
there's an art to it, but it's not really like
Yeah.
so there's that sort of
Sometimes it's a complete accident, and other times there's
yeah.
just one person who fought for something to be in there, and like,
So
or
that's
that,
like
that got it.
almost
Yeah.
the aestheticized form of games.
Hmm.
And I feel like I don't know, I just think about like one of my favorite movies is a movie by Paul Verhoeven, Showgirls.
Oh yeah. I recently rewatched that and gained a new respect for that film, actually.
Yeah, well, and that's a movie that has been like the like discourse around it. At the time, it was like regarded as one of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah, yeah.
And now like people are reevaluating it and stuff. And like for me being like somebody who was a film major in school and like has seen a lot of movies,
Mhm.
it's one of my favorite movies because there's no regard for that traditional format. Like he's trying to make a statement sort of within this like other really kind of over the top
Mhm.
um, like kind of cartoonish format. And like I think that stuff can be so powerful because it goes against what your typical expectations are. Like when I played Sunset, like I'm like didn't expect to be like, oh gee, this feels like incredibly relevant to what is going on in my life and in the world right now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I actually kind of agree with you about Showgirls because like I know that when I went to see it in the theater when it came out, I was totally just like, what the hell is this? And didn't get it at all. But now, yeah, I can see why people are reevaluating it now because watching it now, it's sort of like, okay, I see this is just like a very subtle film, actually. I mean, it's like hard
Yeah.
just it's like this is a very subtle film. And in a way, yeah, he's setting it up and letting it go. It's like he's not gonna he doesn't judge her. He doesn't like, judge the situation. It's just this is what her life was. This is what happened. It's like it doesn't really tell you everything. Doesn't give you all the total picture of her life even, and I kind of respect that now. I don't know.
Yeah,
When
well,
I didn't even think about it before, but now like seeing it again, I respect that he just let the character be what she was and then she walked away and you're just like, okay, I'll draw my own conclusions from that, and
yeah, it's not trying to moralize for you
right, exactly. And I
or
think that
wrap
that's
it up in a
pretty important.
bow. Like it's not gonna wrap it up in the bow at a bow at the end. And I don't know. That's what the thing that I liked
Yeah.
about Sunset is there are other plenty of other narrative games that I played where the structure is very like there's good moments to it, but like the structure is very you know what to expect. There's an arc
Mm.
that is kind of similar,
Yeah.
and it has about the same kind of length, like
Yeah.
structure. There's like that traditional kind of narrative, like the way that the world like arc, the way that the world is
Yeah.
constructed is like oftentimes you know built around certain expectations. And with
Yeah.
Sunset, like you're just doing the same actions over and over again, and a lot of people don't like that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything
Yeah.
wrong with doing it for 5 hours. Like it's fine. Like that's like you just have
Yeah.
to adjust your expectations accordingly and know, okay, this is what
Yeah,
this
and
is
then it's
going to
more about
be.
getting into the story a bit, and like, yeah, I have no like metric on like how that game is appreciated or anything. I know what I appreciated it for and how I remember making it. I mean, I think I just also was like way too close to our creations, like, in the
Hmm.
sense that, you can't really see your own work. And I actually want to see that game. Like, and so I'm just like, it's going to take a few years before I can actually like objectively like even look at that thing. Like I look at
Definitely.
the path now and it's like and I feel a lot of feels.
The
It's
the
like,
path.
yeah, the path was,
Yeah.
was our
Yeah,
earlier
yeah. I just
game.
wanted to make sure that that's what you said.
Yeah. Yeah, the path was is like that, or like the Endless Forest. Like I almost like cry when I play the Endless Forest now because it's just like, oh. And so it's like I want to feel that for Sunset, but I don't feel that yet. Like right now, it's still, even now, even a year later, it's still too close to me and too much like something that I can still feel making it like too
Hmm.
strongly and not playing it like.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I know it's imperfect, but it was like kind of this. Yeah, maybe in the end it was made. Well, this is just me speaking because Michael has completely different views on this, but it's like kind of like we made it as this final exercise, like throwing everything that we could at it, like in the sense of everything we like, just even in terms of making it, like we had such a very large team on that game that we've never had before.
Hmm.
And I worked with all these modelers, and I've never worked with a bunch of like we had three modelers, I think, on that game, including myself. So it's like four people modeling for Sunset. It's just the most bizarre experience. It's like, okay, let's make a game, like process, pipeline, spreadsheets, like multiple drop boxes, like everything going on. This great, like professional, composer doing the soundtrack and like, collaborating. We even made him collaborate with like all these people
Yeah.
who,
I had a
you know,
friend who has a Moog piece in that game.
it's so great, right? Yeah, 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 yeah. Tammy, Tammy,
Yeah,
yeah.
Tammy.
It's like it's a trip. It was just really great to have this like whole thing and then pull it off. It's just like whoa. And we even did like. I know. I guess that's why we were so disappointed in the end because we were just like, okay, so people are just gonna look at how it sells and then like, yeah, okay, success, failure. And we didn't quite know how whether we felt it was a successful game or not, like by our own metric either when we first brought it out. And then but still I defend all of our creation like the mama bear. It's like this is my bear cub, like back off, bitch. Like and it's just like so surreal. It's like we almost just couldn't follow that up. It's like sort of like what am I going to follow that up with? It's like
Yeah.
there was nowhere for us to go anyway,
Well,
in spite of like even if it had sold like tons, even if everyone had loved it, there was nowhere for us to go from there. It was just like the only thing we could do was figure out how to once and for all like make the deals, work with
yeah.
Sony, work with Microsoft. How are we going to do that? Like that doesn't work for us. I
No.
think that's the thing.
Well, it's
The maximum realization was that there are certain things in certain places we couldn't go, like based on our just not having that kind of savvy, even.
yeah. Well, it's weird because I think about it and like what you're doing now. Cathedral in the Clouds, like there isn't that much distinction between that and your other work, and that's like fine. There doesn't need to be, and that's the weird thing of like that you almost have to declare that you're not doing games
Yeah.
just to be like, okay, I am never going to work for Sony. I am never going
Yeah.
to like do this
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm not selling it anymore. I don't care if you buy it anymore. You know what I mean? It's like we still sell our old games, but it's like we just don't want to create with that mindset for the foreseeable future. We shut down our company. Like
Mhm.
Tale of Tales is Michael and me, so Tale of Tales still exists. But as a company, like official legal entity company, we shut that down.
Mhm.
And that was like a big symbolic step for us. It was just like, okay, we're not doing that. But we're thinking about starting a nonprofit. We're just like, yeah, let's start a nonprofit, like all the donations that go to the cathedral, go into can, be donated then somewhere else or whatever. I mean, it's like or can, continue to help the cathedral grow, but it's like tax deductible or something. You know what I mean? Like we're trying to think of how we can like do this in the like least commercial way possible, and and I think that that's just because we don't want to be involved in that kind of mindset more so than anything else. I mean, and
Yeah.
doing it to ourselves, we are just not the kind of people who can make Minecraft. You know what I mean? Like who can make a game and it's just like everyone's gonna love it and
Why
it's gonna
why is
sell
like
tons. And
why is that an expectation anyway? It totally is, but I just don't understand
I
why
don't
that
understand it
is.
either. Some people have a talent for this. It's like John Blow has a talent.
Yeah.
Like all these people who sell tons have a talent for doing this. They can do that. They can work within that. Even if they do it accidentally, I'm gonna say it's still like a talent
Well,
of making
someone
something.
someone like John Blow, like even though he's doing art leaning stuff, he's worked within that system for a long time,
Yeah,
so he
he
understands
lives
it.
there. He breathes it. He knows it. It's there.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
in his
it's the
blood.
same thing with like with most people who are successful in that world. Like that's just what they know.
Yeah, it's just in you, I think. And some people have that, or it's a part of a certain sort of privilege, or it's like, it's just you're just well placed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or yeah, I don't know what it is, but some people got it and some people don't, and we just know we don't.
And there's
We're
there's
like
no
cool with
reason why there has to be an expectation on people to have that,
yeah.
which is I
And I
don't
think
know.
that we were at a point where people had that expectation, but from the beginning, people had weird, like, sort of expectations. Like when we made The Path, for example,
Mm.
like we did it at a time when indie games were not this full-on 3D, real-time 3D experience. And so people were comparing like The Path with like, Uncharted or something, whatever was out at the time, and going, oh, the graphics aren't so great. You know what I mean? We were sitting there like, are you kidding me? Like
Yeah.
we made this for what it took to buy lunch for the team of Uncharted, it's like, but it's like, so people have always been putting like weird expectations of like qualitative like things on us. And so we just sort of know that that happens, like, and so people are looking at us going, oh, why did you never make a console game? We're sitting there like, who do you think we are? Like,
Yeah.
it's just bizarre. It's like I know like everyone and their uncle has done that, you know what I mean? But it's not like it's like you have to that took a lot of effort. I guess is what I'm saying. Don't underestimate the amount of effort it takes anyone to make what they make.
Yeah.
Like and it's an effort that
Well,
takes a certain drive in a certain direction and
yeah.
like I don't have that. It's like
And not just like raw creative effort, like, man
no, like
hours up, but
schmoozing, like
like
talking people up, being
yeah.
able to make the deal, close the deal, get the money, manage the money, make the game. I mean, not everyone does it really well either. I mean,
Yeah.
plenty of games fail, after even doing all that,
Well,
so it's like,
and there's also like the factor of like how much effort, how much thought, how much like the heart is being put into the work, and how much of that is being put into the promotion, because it often
yeah,
feels like much more of it is being put into like promotion and like making those connections and being part of that world and
yeah,
communicating to that, and there's just that little like little bits and pieces of whereas like a lot of smaller works or things that are more experimental, like there is such this like huge degree of thought and effort that is put into like try the kind of experience it is, like what is it
yeah,
trying to communicate, and people don't recognize that because it's not like this raw energy that you can measure
yeah,
quantitatively.
yeah. You know what? I went to like some random website the other day and like they had this background image of, it was like the header or something. And you rolled over it and it was just like a little light attached to the end of your cursor as you rolled over this 3D background. And so it was sort of lighting this 3D background in this really like nice way as you rolled your mouse over it, lit it up. And if you rolled away, like, you were like lighting up different parts of it. Like, and it just felt so tactile, like even though I'm using a mouse on my computer, and it just reminded me of like flooding back to like all these like sort of net art memories of like, feeling like you could touch things behind the screen and I just really felt something for it, even though it was just some stupid website. Like I don't even remember what it was for, okay?
Hmm.
But it was just like it was just a really nice moment of interaction. And I was like, oh, people just don't care about interaction design as much as they used to. And it felt like a strange thing to think when everyone is doing interaction design.
Yeah.
Everyone is like, all these games are all about like mechanics and like all this stuff. But it's like, but I could sit here and like rub over some like background, 3D background, and just have this total like feeling of like nostalgia and like connection and like, oh, this is just really beautiful,
Well, there's like a lack of subtlety to it. There's like a to like the the way that things have gone. Like
Yeah.
there's not an interest in like that sort of smaller or more strategic design where just these
Or
subtle
just
things.
making something just I don't know, there's a certain subtlety. I know not everybody's into that, but at the same time, it just seems like there's a for a while it seemed like everyone was trying to go for a very sort of an emotional kind of design or a like expressive kind of design. And then it's sort of just now, I don't know what it is. It's like for default. Like, this is the default Unity scene. I've got like my mouse look and my WASD and like I'm just gonna fill the world with stuff and a story,
I
And
don't
like,
think people think about it so much. It's just like that becomes the format because maybe that's just the way
yeah.
that the technology is built.
Yeah, and I think that as we were using that for Sunset, like we were just sort of like, yeah, but now so what we're gonna try to do, we've got this like basic, like we even tested the navigation to make sure it was totally standard. Like we tested it on people. Like, what do you expect to happen when you hit the tab button? What do you expect to happen? And it's like just to make sure, like, that we hadn't done anything weird, and then we were just like, okay, so now we can do whatever the hell we want in the world, It's like, but and so then we just started trying to make this very subtle story, this or not so subtle even, like just like, we need explosions, we need a conflict, we need we want to have like this world that you're in, and we want you to sort of believe in this world, and like, yeah, you're doing these tasks daily, like every day in day out. That's what it's like to be a housekeeper. What I mean? Like, you're just like trying to, but at the same time, the world is going to hell beyond the glass. It's like because that's kind of what it feels like right now, right? Like the world is going to hell beyond the glass. Like the
Yeah.
glass of your screen, the glass of your window, the like and how can we make people within the drudgery of their lives feel like things are changing? I don't know. And I don't know. It was a really difficult task, or that is a very difficult thing to do, to try and create some sort of subtlety in a world and like have people feel for it. So not everyone can, and that's the other thing we've always known about our work is like not everyone is equipped or has the desire to even enjoy something like that, enjoy
Yeah.
something.
But I
And
don't
we're always cool with that, but everybody always expects like, oh, you're making it for everyone, the masses, like you. I don't know. It's just, and especially now. For a while that disappeared, but I think that, well, now, a year ago, last time I paid attention, last time I was cussed out by some random teenager on Twitter. It's about like the fact that I was making something that they didn't understand, and it's just like, that's cool. I don't need you to love me. I don't need to love you. All right, carry on.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's like that's the fact that like regardless of whether it was successful or not in whatever by whatever standards or metrics you evaluate success, the fact that you were trying to grapple with this whole idea at all just like
Mm.
is not a thing. Like I guess people grapple with it in their own way, in their own like, and they have their own ways of like addressing it in their own work. Even stuff that is more kind of seems more conservative or rote in some ways, but still, like, I don't know. I guess that's just the thing that is missing for me for like most. most stuff and most of that culture is just there isn't this desire within art or within like especially that kind of creative practice, like design oriented
Yeah.
interactive stuff in addressing like what is actually going on in the world.
Yeah, yeah. That's a big one. It's really hard to address things as they're going on, and I mean, well, that is the reason why we set our game in 1972 because it was just like we can't exactly talk about what's going on right now because it's still going on. I mean, we're like by the time the game comes out, the world's going to be completely different, you know, and also we don't, yeah, want to like take some sort of like moralistic stance. I don't ever want to be the one who's standing there telling other people what to think and they're supposed to believe what I believe. I don't know. It's just I just don't think that solves much. Like I just want to like try to create a situation where people can think about what they believe, I guess, and question it, not just always, you know, take things at face value with whatever you're pre-programmed with, but you know, I'm going to create a world and let you loose in it and you can, and maybe it's programmed and set up in a certain way to trigger certain thoughts in you or to help you to think through something, you know.
Mhm.
um that's always been sort of an approach to video game design that we've had, like be it like putting people in a forest where they have to play an animal and they can't talk to one another, you know. This is like rather surreal situation, you know, but it's like imagine a world where you don't understand each other, but that's okay. The world is still all right. It's not about this like communication understanding thing. It's more about like valuing the world you're in, I guess,
Mhm.
and the people who are there, and we're all silly, aren't we, you know, that kind of thing. Is sort of just basic statements like, but we're not going to sit there and tell you no, no, love your neighbor, you know, make sure that you like, you know, don't judge that person because they don't speak perfect English and you know all that sort of stuff, and don't troll people in the chat room and all that. Instead we just make the world, you know.
Yeah.
And I think with Sunset it was like, well, a very complex situation that we had almost no control over. It was like we created this world and then just for ourselves even, and just were like, okay, so what happens when you're in this world, you know, which is the world that we're already in, but whatever, you know, it's
Mhm.
like, so what do we think about this, you know?
Well, it's interesting because I mean, one of the biggest things that that game made me think about was in like in when you're making art, like even the most sort of indulgent, abstracted stuff that seems like so distant from the world, you're coming in with your own emotions and your own experiences or whatever, and there's going to be that like part of your reality that is coming into that experience, and it is going to be in some way uh, like in dialogue with the world and you know trying to construct an idea or a purpose within it. And Sunset, like I feel like definitely tried to make that more
Yeah.
explicit with the character saying like, how do I appreciate all this art when how do I appreciate these tasks which seem so utterly domestic and pointless in like the midst of all this like you know really aggressive conflict when all these other you know when my literal brother is like out there doing all this stuff, getting like having horrible shit happen to him. Like how do I how is what I'm doing important? And like I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think that's a question that like we can ask and we should be asking like more as a like a culture both from both
Right.
ends, like from the end of like activists who are saying like you know like who are being prescriptive about what kind of activism is important because like
Right.
that has so many limitations and there are so many like things that go like unmanifested or whatever in the
Yeah.
image of reality that activists have, and like what you're you know what you're supposed to do if you're part of a revolutionary movement or whatever. There are so many,
Mhm.
we have to like have a complex way of thinking about this, and not everyone is going to be able to join in that, and not everyone
Right.
should. There
Right.
should be something like there's something okay about like you know like staying at home and cleaning the house or
Yeah.
whatever.
if more people stayed at home and cleaned the house, there'd be less war. But
Yeah, I mean, like, and that seems like a really like naive statement to make in some ways, and it is, but it also isn't. Like,
but
there,
the thing is, most people are just staying at home and cleaning the house anyway. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, like,
It's like we're not all like I mean,
and that's okay, but it's not okay. Like,
yeah, yeah,
like,
exactly. It's like it's okay, but it's not okay. But what do you think about it? It's really, I mean, it's like we're not like gonna sit here and make this judgment call. You know what I mean? It's like it's your life. You figure it out. You know what I mean? For your what's going on in your life, your community, your family. It's like what do we, how do you want to impact me? How do you want to impact the world? Like, it's like this is something that's food for thought. You know what I mean? And like action. You know, but like not everyone can like everyone's going to do it in their own way. And I think that's what Sunset is pointing out. Everyone's going to do it in their own way. It's like ultimately she was pivotal and like key to the whole like, resolution of the Civil War. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well,
It's
there
like
isn't there
by
isn't
staying there and cleaning the house.
there isn't one way to be an activist, or there isn't one way to be like an artist.
Exactly. So it's yeah, it's a funny thing. And still my favorite part of that whole game is that you only see her in reflections. And it's like, so it's those moments when you're standing back and she is, or you playing her, are looking at yourself, and going, you're not that, you in your physical body are not in your body, but in another one, which is what an avatar is, but people tend to forget, it's like
Yeah.
that the avatar experience is just like not being yourself and putting yourself in someone else's position,
Well,
and
yeah.
interesting. I
It
don't know.
also has that like association of like video games are traditionally very seen as very masculine. You have this
Yeah.
perspective of like you're making active changes to the environment or abstract systems with like
Hmm.
complex strategy games and stuff. But the character of this game is like a black woman who's like you know somebody historically might have been seen as a more passive voice, and the
Right.
way that she interacts with the world is more passive, and yet like all these things are still being addressed. And
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very odd game. I know it, it's like, and like I said, I still can't see it, um,
yeah, I don't know, I
but I'm
think
proud to have made it. You know what I mean?
yes.
Like, I think I feel that way about all our work though, and one should feel proud of one's creations, I suppose, but it's just, I'm really, quite proud. And I think that we walked away from video games kind of with this feeling of, I know I did, walked away with this feeling like, okay, I did that, It's
Mhm.
like done. I don't have to do it again. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think eight games is quite enough. And there's still like, ideas that we had that never got finished and um the little thing we put out recently called Lock, which was like an iPhone thing,
Mhm.
iPhone and Android thing. That was sort of a residual idea that we turned into something else. It's like I think that's going to continue to happen in our work.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk about work that you're doing now.
Yeah, maybe I should do that.
Go
Talk about
for
what I'm
it.
doing now. I mean, it feels like I'm not working now, but I actually am. We're working on Cathedral in the Clouds, which is Michael and I attempting to build a cathedral in VR, a VR experience of a cathedral space that we hope will be multiplayer. We switched, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but we switched engines. We're not using Unity anymore. We're trying to use Unreal. I'm just couching all this in like tentative language because what we're doing right now, I mean, we went through a big research phase, for which we did a lot of traveling. So we went and looked at cathedrals and met
Yeah.
people and talked about
I
cathedrals. And
I saw some of your pictures and your panoramic photos because I backed you on Kickstarter.
yeah, cool. Thanks. Yeah, yeah. Like, so that was part of our process or is part of our process always. So we didn't skimp on that, but we got invited to Poland. So that was like a really cool trip that there's like a cultural institute there called the Adam Mickiewicz Institute. I'm probably murdering that last name. And they basically invite artists from other countries to visit Poland and present their work. So we talked to students while we were there. And then also they arranged a whole little mini tour of Poland because we said we'd never been there. And they were sort of like, oh, no, you must meet artists in Poland. You must see our cathedrals. You must visit our museums. We're like, okay. So they arranged this whole little tour for us. And it was really, really wonderful.
That's cool.
So that was one thing. And then the rest of our research is sort of, if it's not in countries very close to us, like France or, Germany, parts of Germany rather close to us, those we do on our own. But then other things are sort of incidental to other trips that we're taking. So when we went to Genoa in Italy, that was because we went to Game Happens, which is a yearly game conference in that happens there in Italy, and we were invited to give a talk there. So while we were there, we just like, we went to Milan and hung out with some friends of ours, and then we like traveled around a bit, and it's all kind of easy by train, like once you're like over here. So it's kind of once you get to a place, you just kind of can do some exploring. So that's kind of how we've been handling it. But that kind of research is something that we really get into because, well, I love to travel. Michael doesn't like to travel so much, but I love to travel. So like I can just, if somebody invites me someplace, usually I'm there. Like so. But we can't go on like that for too long, obviously, because that's like time not spent like actually making stuff. It's more like thinking about making stuff
Hmm.
and as we found when we've done previous projects, like too much of that just kind of muddies your head a bit and makes the project seem much larger than you actually want it to be. It's
Yeah.
like so we start getting all these complex thoughts. I mean, and especially something like cathedrals, religious mythologies, all this sort of stuff. It's like we really need to pare it down. Like also reading, like we've been doing lots of reading and well, Michael's been reading more than I have because I must admit I haven't read a book this year. Isn't that weird? Most years I read like 30 books. For some reason, since I quit video games, I haven't read anything. Maybe I needed that kind of like escapism into novels and literature and stuff to sort of balance out like all the
To
video game making.
counteract the video game escapism. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe. But so Mike, I've been more like reading articles and learning like all this stuff about composition, like in terms of image composition and architectural design also. So, cathedrals are built on certain geometric principles. And some people would even say like numbers from the Bible, but also things like golden section, there's a lot of
What
classical
what is
design.
golden section?
The golden section or the golden rectangle. Do you know about the golden rectangle? That's like
I
a
don't think
special
so.
rectangle that they say is like the divine proportion. Like,
Oh.
it's almost as if, or rather it is, that in the past, like our ancestors looked at nature and they measured everything, really got into math of the world and started looking at flowers, started looking at human proportion, started looking at, just all of these different things in nature and realizing that there was like an underlying mathematical formula
Mm.
underneath it all. And that is 1.618 or something like this. 1 to 1.61. Anyway, this proportion, which is called the divine proportion or the golden section or the golden rectangle, it's like if you make a rectangle of this proportion, it is meant to be this perfect thing,
Hmm.
this perfect proportion that underlies all of nature and what our people used to believe or the reason why they built according to this proportion is because they felt that this was the language of God. This is nature. Since all of nature follows this proportion, God designed according to this proportion. So a lot of architecture, a lot of art um, follows this numerical proportion. It's a really funny thing. It's an amazing thing
That's really
because it's actually true that this proportion exists. But
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about how the like laws and values about around that stuff change. I assumed that that changed around like the modernist era and like
yeah, yeah.
early 20th century and all that kind of stuff when there was more of a pushback against that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very classical. I mean, it's, the Greeks, built the Parthenon according to this proportion. It's like it's a very classical thing. So as soon as you get out of the this classical mindset or think caring about this kind of stuff, yeah, then people want to just say, no, we're free to do whatever and, get beyond that. But there is something beautiful in this proportion. Like you feel it more so than you know it. And it's been interesting to learn more about it. And not only that, but other sort of geometrical, underlying geometrical principles that are built into ecclesiastical architecture often, or or even in the artworks that were made for churches. Like it's extremely interesting to know like why things are composed the way they're composed.
Yeah, I mean that's something that is really distant from most people growing up, nowadays. Like we don't really have any like insight into why these things were made the way that they are, and I like culturally, even
Yeah.
in more religious cultures, we have modernized so much that I think that we're very, at least in like
Well,
the Western world.
it's a lost kind of knowledge, and it's also something that maybe isn't as important to creation now, but it
Mm.
is fascinating in the sense of if you look at something and you wonder why it's beautiful, half the time there's like a reason why you find it beautiful. And it's
Yeah.
like, especially old stuff, there's a real like they really cared about these ideas about symmetry and I don't know, like there were certain ways that they knew they could affect a person by designing something in a certain way. And actually it really is designed. Like now it gets kind of lost and like if you look this stuff up on YouTube, you get into like sacred geometry and all this stuff and it's like wrapped up in all kinds of mumbo jumbo and like weird superstitious bizarro crap that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that artists were actually designers. Like all these artists were designing something for other people, you know what I mean? And they did this very consciously. It wasn't like some mystical, like, oh, let's have a seance and make a painting kind of thing. It was like, no, I'm making something that has to have order that is going to, affect people and make them feel the presence of, their deity or something. This is like an important step towards design. This is not like, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
It's like
there's
I just looked at a lot of bad YouTube videos.
yeah, I do too. There was a lot riding on the designers for those cathedrals, though. I'm assuming, like, not like wealthy people who were, giving them employment or money to do this. Plus, like, I don't know, it like reflects whatever whoever commissioned this
Yeah.
project,
Yeah,
and
these were like choice commissions. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it was a different world, you know? It's like it's hard to compare anything, you know what I mean? It's with now or anything. I mean, it's like to say like, yeah, they had wealthy patrons, but those were the only people who needed art too. I mean, it's like most people wouldn't see anything decorated in their lives, or a painting in their lives until they went to the church and
yeah.
then they were sort of overwhelmed by and that was kind of the point of it too, like the stained glass and the gold and everything. It's like um you could look at it positively and be like, well, this is meant to enrich people's lives, enrich their souls, to give them something to aspire to on the one hand, and I don't mean like materially. I mean like it's all about like the hereafter, or it's about your spirit, or it's about like, you know, telling you a story that's going to help you.
Hmm.
That's one positive way of looking at it. I know there's like a million negative ways to look at this stuff too, but it's like to me it's like, or at least the parts that we care about as us designers right now are the sort of enlightening parts. And I think
Yeah.
that's we sort of talked about this tiny bit like last time we spoke, that the deal is that Michael and I often feel like we're trying to make work in the middle of positive work in the middle of like a world that's sort of gone to shit. Like, no one can deny that, especially with this year, 2016, like has been like the most turbulent. It's been like a very strange year so far, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
It's really hard as an artist to like sit there and be like, okay, we're going to try to make this positive spiritual work. I mean, it's like, what are we doing? But in a
uh,
way, it's very
I
vital.
mean, I mean, times change. Like, I have no idea what the future, like things change, values change, the way that like there's no way to predict that stuff, but like things that remain constant are still constant. Like I can still go back and like watch one of my favorite movies that was made in a much different era and still get lots out of it. But I think what you were saying about like the divine being this like this closed off thing to normal people, it kind of makes me think in a way that didn't really go away, because like I think about like pop music videos and stuff like that
Mhm.
that just embodies that, like, or Hollywood movies that just embodies that access, and that sort of like the closest thing that people of today have with contacting the divine is like, or this thing that's like larger than them, that's larger than life, is still this thing that is like, it's not controlled by churches anymore, but it's controlled
Right.
by
It's
like
Beyonce or
corporations.
something.
Yeah, yeah. I won't. I'm not gonna go into the Beyonce thing.
Okay, we won't start that rabbit
um,
hole.
because I talked about that a little bit on the last podcast. But anyway, well, the other thing that I had mentioned before we started recording last time, this recording is into a few different chunks, by the way, for people wondering, because I'm going to edit it all together. But anyway, I mentioned the movie Andrei Rublev, the Tarkovsky movie, which is about a Russian icon painter. Um, and I don't know, that I find that movie really interesting as a like, it's an insight into a different era where these artists are commissioned to do this work that is basically like glorifying a particular person, or a particular like area or a particular city or whatever, and they're kind of hapless tools that are used in the midst of like warring
Right.
like cultures and warring like one of them is a one of the plots in the movie is that there's this like um brother the brother of this guy who like commissions the artists to make this great work, like grabs them up, and I think he has them do like design of a cathedral and like the frescoes for him, and then he like tries to stab all their eyes out so they can never do anything more beautiful again.
Right.
And it's just dealing with this kind of idea of like, how do I make art? How do I do something that's meaningful in the midst of all this like shit happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, it kind of brings me back to thinking about Sunset too, in that like you're trying to find a way or a purpose like for art and for this kind of like creativity that exists away from immediately like what's going on in the culture, um, and reconcile that, like, how, what is the purpose of this, and just trying to grapple with that. And like I don't know, I don't really know that there's an easy answer to that,
Mhm.
but it's kind of like in an eternal conflict. I mean, I'm actually struggling with that right now. Like, is it really worth it for me to try to make a living as an artist and do that? Or is it more worth it for me to like, try and make a difference and like, get involved with like, other like organizing or like helping
Yeah,
people
like
in
what is the
various
best
forms.
way yeah, because anyone who has a conscience is sitting there going, well, okay, how can I, be a force for good in all of this or help others or, whatever. And it's very, but the deal is there's just no one way of doing that.
Yeah.
And that
And of
was what
course,
it was about. And
you can always do both in this day and age. Like, I mean, to some extent.
yeah, and you'll find your own way through it. I mean, or you can, if it just takes the will to do that, I suppose. Um, I think that, uh, yeah. I mean, I don't, and also I think it's good to not pressure yourself too much into to feeling like you have to find a solution for the world's problems. We were sitting here, I was at dinner with some friends the other night, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, Auriea, you should be in charge, Auriea for president." I'm just like, "Oh, you don't want me ruling things." It's like. And in so many ways, I'm happy I'm not a politician. I mean, I'm not the one to, I don't have the answers to any of this stuff, you know? It's like I couldn't tell them like how to solve. I mean, I could tell them probably how to not start a war, you know, but I don't think I could end one, if you know what I mean, once it's started. I mean, it's extremely complicated. You know, everybody sits around and, you know, drinks and eats and whatever, and it's like sitting there solving all the problems. But I mean, ultimately, you don't have the solution to help anyone else. You know, it's like you can only try and do your part. I don't know. And whatever that is, you know, it's
Yeah. I mean,
you're, yeah.
if you're the kind of person who believes 100% in democracy and has faith in it, I guess you would say that even politicians, I mean, they're just supposed to be vessels for the people, and
Yeah, they're
and
supposed to be, but yeah.
yeah, and like other people are supposed to be like people organize and affect change,
Yeah.
or like people that you know that they consult are the ones like affecting the world in different ways. So like a politician even is kind of just like beholden to like being the vessel in which other people decide through.
Yeah, somehow. Yeah, it's I guess it's just, you know, this is what is really annoying about people who think that all their problems are caused by one group of people. You know, it's like, oh, it's the immigrants, build a wall, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, no, it's like your problems are systemic. You know, it's like this is, you're gonna get rid of the immigrants, and then who are you gonna blame? You know what I mean? It's like it's not like one thing ever. You know, there's not one person, there's not one thing that's gonna solve everything. Yeah, you know, whatever. You know, you get your large like figures who like, you know, really affect change in a big way, but those are very rare people.
Yeah.
It's like you're not that, you know, most people are not that, you know, it's and that's okay. You know, it's like we're all in this together. It's like so hard for me to fathom that people are so separatist about things, you know, and they want their borders and they want their like, you know, boxes that they put people in when, you know, we're literally all on this planet together. It's like, and you know, not to be too hippie about it, it's just like it's like it just seems like it baffles me like how I don't know, separated people try to be from one another when we're really just one big organism, but whatever. That's
Yeah,
how I feel about it.
I think there's just an impulse to want to come up with an easy answer or an easy explanation for something.
Yeah.
And that's like something that is taken advantage of by people in power or people in politics. And
Mm.
I don't know. I think like I don't know how I guess there has to be something with that has the amount of power that like a politician or somebody with tons of money, a corporation, a Trump equivalent, uh like there has to be something that is positive that has that the amount of power that that has, or at least that can access people in some way. But I'm not trying to like come up to
Yeah, okay.
synthesize answers right now.
No,
I'm
but I know what you mean. Yeah.
like it's just like I think at some level people can compartmentalize really easily, and it's easy to come up with an explanation even if at some level you know that that's not really the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, I think that in the work that, you know, to get slightly back on topic, in the work that we're doing now, we're just trying to be a piece of a puzzle that we see. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, our way of like trying to communicate with the rest of the world, these types of ideas that we have about like society, about culture, about how we can all be together in a space and, you know, feel something about that's beyond us, you know,
Mhm.
and it not be just about like us and our everyday problems, but about something larger that we all share, perhaps, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Even if that's just sitting in an empty room together and listening to the silence or, you know, enjoying a spectacle or, you know, whatever. It's like, or gaining deeper understanding of a story, you know, these are things that are, in some ways quite trivial, but in other ways can be kind of deep for people. I mean, and can be very meaningful within people's lives. And I think that engaging with, I don't know, people um, on a level that isn't so much like in their face, like is something that is I don't know, valuable. It's
Hmm.
like there's so many things in your face, you know. It's like let's just, take it back, a step. Let's, try and just sit together, and
Yeah, I
not
think
even try to understand. We're just gonna sit together and we're gonna chill and we're all gonna, look at that light, or something. It's just, I don't know, there's something to that I think is interesting as well.
yeah, I think like all the noise that happens in our culture, like it's really easy to feel disconnected from even our own thoughts, like even our own like trying to have like some kind of coherency or
Yeah.
continuity, and it's definitely disconnecting us from like being in a group collectively, and like there isn't a lot of access to spaces that are just completely silent like some of these cathedrals
Yeah.
are. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's interesting. I remember back in when I was in college, I watched I took a class on film and spirituality, and I watched this movie called Integrate Silence that was like 3 hours of basically just different like monks meditating.
Oh, I might have seen this.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and everyone
Believe it or not.
who was in the screening left after the first half hour.
Because
Um,
they couldn't deal.
And I moved all the chairs to the side, and I just sat in the middle of the floor, and I was like, I am going to watch this whole movie, and I'm just going to sit and have this experience because it's extremely important. And I don't know. I mean, it was like partly just stubbornness and like wanting to
Yeah.
be better than other people, but but also like I wanted to have that experience, and it like the fact that it was by myself. I mean, it would have been nice if people had, just done that. All Some people had stayed and people had all done that organically and all that. I understand in like college people have things to do and they don't want to sit for 3 hours, like, but
Yeah, but still, yeah.
it was an interesting experience though, and it did make me realize like you don't. There are so few places where we have access to that as a culture.
Yeah. I think one of the things it made me think of was that like what is your life like? Like how special is that to spend your time just doing that activity, Like I was thinking about them, like their activity, what they do all day, what they tend the garden, they chant, they meditate, whatever. It's just like some people, it made me think, or that sort of thing makes me think, like that some people choose to spend their lives in a different way,
Hmm.
and that's a choice that you can make in your life as well. You know what I mean? It's like, and I just thought that was really quite an interesting um, thought because people just forget that there's all kinds of options. It's
Yeah.
like you could choose to like go and like meditate, and chant and be in a collective and it's like I don't know, people get caught up in their it's one of the things I used to say about the ghetto actually is like people forget, or at least when I was coming up, it's like 70s, 80s,
Hmm.
and I'm a kid, and it's like people get so caught up in what that is going on in the neighborhood, they forget there's a whole world, or they don't know, or they never even learn,
Yeah.
It's probably different now. It's like this is the thing about being in your 40s. It's like you just think about what it was like when you were a kid and go, "Oh, and probably everything's different now." But it's like you didn't even know there was a world. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like,
I think the same problems remain with a lot of that kind of stuff.
yeah,
I mean, like people's access to like popular culture is so universal now, so I assume that like affects people's like perspectives.
yeah,
Um,
perhaps. I think you probably get more like this monolithic pop culture moment thing that's going on, and you forget that there's like a lot of diversity within that, or there should be. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't say for sure. I really don't
Yeah, I don't
know,
know.
but
Anyway, I'm speculating and we're drifting.
it's
But
okay. It's related. I mean, like the whole point is to have more abstract discussions. But
yeah.
um, yeah. So what do you hope for you know? I guess I can't say the average person because the average person is probably not going to just
Yeah, no, I
approach
mean, well,
your
like I was saying,
project, but
we're doing this in VR because it's completely inaccessible. The more I look at VR, the more I'm like, nobody's gonna get this. You know what I mean? Like we're doing
yeah.
this so that there'll be like installations of the cathedral, and we hope people will see it in various places, or have access to it in various places. But we don't expect people to play it at home. They can if they
Mhm.
want, but I don't think many people are gonna have that opportunity because of the hardware and requirements of VR right now. Um, so really, it's hard to think about things concretely at this point. It's like, and my goal at the moment is to find, very practical problems, solutions to very practical technical problems, and also aesthetic ones. Like, how are people going to see this? Like, there's certain other aspect to the Cathedral in the Clouds project is there's going to be objects or scenes or whatever that are downloadable of the project to
Mhm.
more normal devices like your computer, like your phone, stuff like that. So I'm sort of, while Michael is wrestling with sort of the greater VR issues, I'm wrestling with the issues of what are these smaller sculptures slash experiences going to be that are
Mhm.
people downloading, and how are we going to make them, and what do they look like? And really, like, my job has always on all of our games been like, the real concrete, like, what are they looking at and what does it look like? you know?
Yeah.
And so I guess, art direction of the entire project, so that's sort of what I'm thinking about right now and also, since I've been doing all this 3D capture and sort of really low level, like, um, motion and 3D capture stuff, and try to figure out how to integrate that into the project because I'm
Mhm.
so into it. It's like a lot of this project is integrating just stuff that Michael and I are really into. Like, and not being so much excited about technology as so much as just sort of following the things that we're passionate about. So, I'm passionate about drawing, so I'm learning all this stuff about, architectural design, composition, painting composition, like old school painting composition,
Mhm.
more about, both of us are heavily interested in synthetic images, like, meaning non-photographic, like not made with a camera apparatus.
Yeah.
Thinking of yourself as not a camera, like the eye is not a camera, but the eye is something that takes in the world. And um, how can our perception be translated into a virtual environment? I mean, that sounds weird, but it's like, the camera in a 3D package is sort of modeled on a physical camera,
Yeah.
but that's not really necessary. It's like, because it's not a physical camera,
Well,
it's a computation,
yeah, I think the idea of the camera is a little bit of a lie.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot, photography is relatively recent in the history of art. So
Mhm.
it's like, if you look back at things that were made, images that were made, painted, drawn, whatever, before cameras existed, a lot of people think like, oh, the Egyptians, they could only draw half the face. They just didn't know how to draw people. And it's just like bullshit. Of course they did. You know?
Yeah, there were like cultural reasons for them doing
Not only
that
cultural, but
or
also perceptual.
aesthetic.
I mean, it's like aesthetic, but also saying something about what they were looking at and
Mhm.
how they wanted that perceived. It's like, that is what composition's about. That is design. You know what I mean? It's designed that way for a reason. Like, one should never assume that, like, creators, artists of the past, like, just didn't know what the hell they were doing. Oh my goodness, they could
Yeah.
be
Well,
realistic, you
people
know?
people do the same thing with video games, like,
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
like old
exactly.
video games.
Yeah, it's what we were talking about before. It's like people are perfectly capable of making these decisions like in a conscious way, and it's not an accident. It's not programmer art. It's not like, it's like this. Sometimes it is. Don't get me wrong. Not everyone's perfect. Not
Yeah.
everyone's like thought this through, and not everyone's a good artist. But at the same time, there's plenty of people who are making these decisions quite consciously and, for all kinds of reasons that aren't just like, oh, it looked cool to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think you have to sort of come in with that like expectation that like there is some reason or purpose behind it.
Right. Accept it, take it as it's given, like accept it for what it is and not like what it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and that's the benefit of like looking at going back and looking at art like this. We were talking about this before of like you can take what you like and what you want out of it, and you don't have to like experience a lot of the like bad elements of it, like the aspect of like most people at the time when these cathedrals were built didn't really have access to art or anything like that in their everyday lives, and so that was their one access to it. Like that element of like class and all that kind of stuff like
yeah.
is not, I mean, obviously you have to go to the cathedrals and visit them, but like it's not as much of a, you can take exactly what you want out of it because it's still sitting there preserved. It's not like of the current culture, and usually that slice of what you want is something that is may or may not be missing from like contemporary culture now.
Mm. Yeah.
Or I think about that like in terms of like again like it's weird to say this, but because it's such a recent like medium, but like playing older video games like or at least like looking at them, I do have the experience of like there's a lot of stuff that people concentrate that is bad about these things,
Mhm.
and like what is bad is obvious, but at the same time if you concentrate on the positive things, there are a lot of aspects of that that aren't really reflected in the sort of modern norms. And I
Yeah.
mean, I feel
Yeah.
the same way about looking at like classical art or whatever, is that like, to my modern sensibilities, does some of this stuff appeal to me? Like most of it doesn't. Some of it does. Like it depends
Mhm.
on the artists, I assume. Like, some
Yeah.
artists from that
As with
period who
anything.
are,
Yeah, of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
some artists from that period who are more unique or who have more of their own sensibility within that framework, I tend to have more of an effect on me. But like I can take even from like your average thing from that era, like I can take something from that that I can't take from something that's done today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, about the old games, I mean, yeah, we're currently about to, it's a small anecdote, side note. Michael and I are about to move house, and so we're going through all our stuff, and we're looking at our game collection, which is not vast, but it's like, it's all the games that we liked well enough to buy.
Hmm.
And we're looking at PS1 games and trying to decide which ones we're going to keep, which ones we're going to get rid of, and we have whittled down our collection of PS2 games, which was our largest part of the collection that we have. And the ones that I remember most fondly, are these PS2 games. And it had nothing to do with like how they, um, how they looked or even how they played, but just how I remember them or how they
Hmm.
made me feel or something
Yeah.
was more important to me than like, it's like now maybe I can't play a game like Shadow of Memories because it probably handles like crap and like, and it's I don't know. There's probably something about it that's just like makes it almost unplayable at this point. That's
Yeah.
especially true of PS1 games. I was playing like the remake of the first Tomb Raider on my iPad the other day, and I
Hmm.
realized they put in save point. Like no, they put in you could save anywhere, and I remembered that in when I originally played that on PS1. You couldn't save anywhere. You had to
No.
find a save point, and all this stuff. Like that used to be the way that things were designed was you had to find a save point. So you couldn't quit playing until you found a save point. And it's just like, whoa, why did they do that? It's just like I wished that they had kept that, even though I know it's a remake, but it's like, why did they change that? That should have been like, that was an integral part of the experience of playing it.
Yeah.
It's just like I think that old games like stay within people, like and people, it's like I like to talk shit about people who like really old, like, arcade games or whatever. But it's like, I can understand that that's just something that's in you at a certain point, and you remember it differently than it actually was to play it. And I think that that's fine. I mean, you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
that's great,
Well, you're
art and stuff.
remembering like highlights from or like specific scenes or specific moments that happened in those games probably because they were the most like memorable or whatever. Like
Well, for you, or
yeah, for
that
you
moment,
personally.
that it's like
Or you
it.
have like an emotional association with that particular moment for some reason. Like I used to like put music on like and turn off the music for the game and just play that. So now whenever I like look at Final Fantasy VI, I think of Captain Beefheart. Like
Right. Stuff like that. It's like, there's so many like little stupid game quotes like wrapped into Michael and my like daily anecdotes. Like we'll just be saying something and then, we'll say something from a video game and we both know what each other's talking about. It's like some quote from, I don't know, some old game or whatever. And it's just
mhm.
like, it's hilarious. Like, I think that these things become a part of your life, and that's what good art is. And it doesn't matter like whether the game stands the test of time or not, or even I mean, every time all these old games, that I'm looking at, like trying to decide which ones we want to keep, or it's like they were all pushing the technology at their time.
Yeah.
People always say, "Oh yeah, art has to be about its time." Well, every game is very much about its time, and
There like I feel like there might be a few exceptions, but it's a very, very, very small number. Like I'm just thinking of like things that were made by I don't know. I guess it is hard to look at to see outside of that like technological limitations because everything is defined ultimately by the means in which it was made, especially
yeah,
especially like film or games.
yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, yeah, films from the 60s have a different look than films do now. I mean, it's like
That's
that's in
true.
part due to the way they were filmed, what they were filmed on, and the technologies that were there and in use at
It
the time.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is there's a difference between like you can look back and watch Eraserhead or like Meshes of the Afternoon or something like that and there's like there isn't like even though they were defined in by the means in which they were made, there's also like not really a way that it's interfacing with things that are going around in that time and that makes it almost like easier to access now in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. It's like I see what you mean, but at the same time, they're still very much. I mean, Eraserhead is very much a part of what was going on then. I mean, I don't know. It's like it's a funny thing, but you're right in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you can't escape in some way the time that you made a thing, and that's
You
not.
really can't. You really can't.
Yeah, and
Or
that's
at least
fine.
I think anyway. I think that it's wonderful actually that one can feel that. I mean, yeah, I don't know. So there's no going back, There's always only going forward. There's now, and there's no, even things that were retro are like, still a part of now, It's just weird. It's not like you can suddenly become a part of some past that, never really existed because it's only the past is just what you remember of it
Yeah,
and
it's an idea. Like the whole retro thing is like very much specific things that people remember. It's not what actually existed. And
yeah.
it's often like very specific aspects of things that people remember and it's often like kind of the same ones over and over again.
Yeah.
And it is weird if you go back and actually look. I love going back and looking at not just old games obviously, but like that and like seeing like okay there's these aspects but there's also this experience of like I feel this experience of like alienation from a lot of these older games because there's this like um they can't really completely convey what they're trying to convey in a way um and like or there's just like
Well,
there
why do you think that is, though? Why can't they convey what they're trying to convey?
well like I guess that's not a good way of looking at it there's a lot of limitations to their world, and there are things like, for example, you can't save anywhere or something
Right,
like
right.
that contributes to that. But that like feeling of alienation is actually really interesting, and you don't really get that from like emulations of that stuff most of the
Right,
time.
right.
So
Yeah.
people remember selectively what they remember, and it's oftentimes, especially when it comes to like more mainstreamized or like pop culture sensibilities, people remember the most like the like candy part of it, and not like
Yeah.
all the like bitter stuff that.
Right. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah. I still have fond memories of playing Devil May Cry, although I know I probably dislike that game now. It's like, but I'll always love it.
Yeah.
For example, for one weird example.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I feel like everyone has very strange examples of things that should not fit in with their sensibilities, but
Yeah,
somehow do.
it does. Yes, I don't know. So we're keeping certain things. We're keeping LA Noir. Why are we keeping LA Noir? We just are. It's like, yeah, I'm looking at the shelf now, what we're keeping. Beyond Good and Evil stays.
Hmm.
Yeah. Guild Wars 1 stays, apparently. There's even a few Wii games we're keeping. I don't know what we're going to do with the ones we're not going to keep. Most of them are going. I'm just going to say that now.
Yeah.
Most of them are going.
I mean, I'm not one for like holding on to games or most things, honestly.
Yeah. It's just really funny for us to like have to go through all our stuff and figure out what stays, what goes. It's like
Yeah.
we've lived in this house for 13 years.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. It's the longest I've lived anywhere in one spot, without going to a new home. I've usually moved at least every 2 years, but you know, I think I lived 4 years in one place once, but yeah. So it's a bit odd for both of us, but yeah.
That is interesting. Well, so is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
Well, okay. Something more of interest to the listeners out there.
No,
Um,
no. I mean, I think
I,
this is a good discussion.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Any other question you may have or about the project or whatever, because maybe I need stimulation to think of something. In my head, I just have like lots of things about 3D and like how I'm gonna, um, what I'm hoping things end up being with Cathedral in the Clouds. But honestly, I don't know what it's gonna be. And probably the first iteration of it is gonna be like somewhat lame and maybe a disappointment to some, but it's like, that's the beautiful thing about cathedrals. They weren't built just once. They were built
Yeah.
once and then they burned down and then they're rebuilt. We actually are thinking of a situation where we build the ruins first
Hmm.
and then we build what it was. Like we sort of go back in time with what we're making and build the ruined cathedral first and then build the final cathedral much, much later. It's like a weird
That's
idea.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah, that could happen. I
That
mean, we
that
have all kinds
speaks
of,
that speaks to an aspect of those cathedrals' lifespans that probably a lot of people don't think about
yeah,
very much.
yeah. And I mean, I personally think it's amazing that any cathedral is still left standing, actually.
Yeah.
It's some of these, were begun on top of, the ruins of some druid, stone circle or something that, was then turned into a temple, by the Romans that was then turned into a, cathedral, and then it burned down and then it was like, rebuilt and then it fell over and then they rebuilt it again and then they built some more onto it and made it bigger and then it's like the history of these things is amazing in some cases.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that draws us to it is the fact that you don't have that with the digital.
Yeah.
Um, you don't have this idea that maybe with mods you do to a certain extent. Like you were talking about Doom last time. People keep building like Doom mods. It's like,
Yeah, it is kind of keep building up and building over top of this thing. Yeah, I have more I have more faith in the longevity of a lot of these Doom mods than a lot of other things because of that. Just because they've been around for a while.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I mean it's interesting. It's a one way that digital things have created a longer lifespan than their creators expected. Um, and I think that's pretty cool. I've been thinking about like all those kind of parallels between something that is seemingly infinite as a cathedral, which, and when I say infinite, I mean because it didn't used to be a cathedral, but maybe it's still on a spot that people have been found to be a strong sacred spot for
mhm.
like, centuries. Um, and the digital, which is just about this immediate gratification all the time, people just think it's throwaway. They don't give a shit. They don't even think it's designed half the time. You know what I mean? It's like people sort of take it all for granted. And I'm like, how can we, I don't know, give a sense of eternity to the digital?
Yeah. Well, I think now that we're in an era of like nostalgia for the early digital, I think that is a thing that will start to arise more.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
I
I,
mean, I think in people's desire for like that retro and nostalgia, there is like a very a very sort of pure desire to want to preserve some aspect of something that has existed in a culture that does not value preserving anything.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's going to be important going forward. I mean, I think as more and more things are simply digital and not preserved in any other manner, um, and I guess I just hope that we can create a project that gives this illusion of eternity, even if it itself is totally finite and will disappear. Um, but I think all of the games that we've made exist somewhere inside of people who have played them and who have loved them, and I'm very like thankful for that. Like it's the one thing that gives me the most satisfaction is knowing that there are people who have played games that I've worked on and they carry a little bit of that with them when they go out into the world and they're saying things, in their daily lives that are, relating to something that I made. And I don't even have to know about that. Like they just knowing that that's out there. There's
Hmm.
girls dressed up and cosplaying as the girls that I, put in my game, the red girls. Like, I think that's just amazing. I can't even believe people did that, but they do.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think that's wonderful. So my life hasn't been wasted.
I think we can end on that.
Yeah, let's end on that.
Okay, cool. Well, so this has been Beyond the Filter. I've been with Auriea Harvey of
Yeah.
Tale of Tales, one half of Tale of Tales,
Hmm.
and you're working on Cathedral in the Clouds, which is a VR installation for based off of cathedrals.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, no, we're cool. We're cool.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Liz.
Oh,
It's
no
great talking
problem.
to you always. And, good luck with the rest of your podcast series.
Yeah, it should be fine.
It's been cool. Thanks.